In 1946, they made history at the OK Corral, creating a cinematic legacy that will never die. But the actors themselves were only human, and the years have not been kind to the legends we once adored. Witness the shocking transformations and the bittersweet legacies left behind by the cast of My Darling Clementine. Their stories didn't end at the credits. The real drama began when the lights went down. Henry Fonda as Wyatt Earp. Born on May 16, 1905 in Grand Island, Nebraska, the acclaimed actor brought the legendary lawman to life in John Ford's 1946 cinematic masterpiece, My Darling Clementine. At the age of 41, Fonda's portrayal of Wyatt Earp became a cultural touchstone widely regarded as one of the definitive depictions of the American frontier hero. He infused the character with a poetic grace, quiet dignity, and stoic moral authority that redefined the Western genre and cemented the film's status as a timeless classic. Despite portraying characters renowned for their righteous integrity, warmth, and noble calm, Henry Fonda was known off-screen to be an intensely private, emotionally distant, and sometimes cold man. This stark contrast between his beloved on-screen persona and his real-life demeanor contributed to a turbulent personal life, including 5 marriages and famously strained relationships with his children Jane and Peter. Professionally, Fonda frequently clashed with the restrictive Hollywood studio system. Unhappy with the quality of his contractually obligated roles and frustrated by being constantly typecast as the infallible American hero, he famously abandoned Hollywood for 7 years in 1948 to return to the Broadway stage. Even after his return to film, he often sought to escape his noble image, eventually jumping at the rare chance to play a sadistic villain in 1968's Once Upon a Time in the West, just to break free from the heroic mold he felt trapped in. Fonda continued to work extensively in film, television, and theater throughout the subsequent decades, securing his status as an undisputed giant of American cinema. After a long career filled with monumental performances, his crowning achievement came late in life when he starred opposite his daughter Jane in the 1981 drama On Golden Pond. The role earned him his first and only competitive Academy Award for Best Actor, though his declining health prevented him from attending the ceremony, leaving Jane to tearfully accept the Oscar on his behalf. Fonda passed away at his home in Los Angeles, California, on August 12, 1982, at the age of 77 from heart disease. His passing marked the loss of one of the 20th century's most defining screen legends, and per his strict final instructions, no formal funeral or memorial service was held, and his ashes were quietly scattered. Linda Darnell as Chihuahua. Born on October 16, 1923 in Dallas, Texas, the striking beauty first brought Chihuahua to life in John Ford's 1946 Western classic My Darling Clementine. At the age of 22, Darnell's portrayal of the fiery, tempestuous saloon singer and hopelessly devoted love interest of Doc Holliday became a critical highlight of her career. Her performance offered a mesmerizing depiction of a fiercely passionate woman, helping to cement her transition from sweet teenage ingenue to one of Hollywood's top dramatic actresses and most successful box office stars of the 1940s. Despite the character's bold, explosive, and hardened nature, Linda Darnell was known in real life as remarkably gentle, sweet-natured, and incredibly vulnerable, a stark contrast to the sultry sirens she often played on screen. This dichotomy was a significant part of her personal journey. She struggled with deep insecurities and the intense pressures of the studio system, having been pushed into the industry by a demanding stage mother. Her career was also marked by the struggle of being typecast as an exotic, or purely decorative beauty, which frequently overshadowed her genuine acting capabilities. Furthermore, after a highly successful run at 20th Century Fox, the studio unceremoniously dropped her contract in 1952. Finding quality work became increasingly difficult in the years that followed, and she faced immense personal hardships, including the mismanagement of her finances, a string of difficult marriages, and a quiet, painful battle with depression and alcoholism. Linda Darnell continued to work sporadically in television stage plays and nightclub acts throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, though she never regained her former cinematic glory. Tragically, her life was abruptly cut short when she passed away on April 10, 1965, at the age of 41, from severe burns and smoke inhalation sustained in a house fire in Glenview, Illinois. In a heartbreaking turn of events, she had been staying at the home of her former secretary and had reportedly been watching one of her own early films on television when the fatal blaze broke out. Her untimely death sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, a devastatingly tragic end for a star who had captivated audiences worldwide. She was cremated, and her ashes were later interred at Union Hill Cemetery in Chester County, Pennsylvania. Victor Mature as Doc Holliday. Born on January 29, 1913 in Louisville, Kentucky, the ruggedly handsome actor first brought the legendary gunslinger to life in John Ford's classic 1946 Western, My Darling Clementine. At the age of 33, Mature's portrayal of the tubercular, cynical, and fiercely loyal Doc Holliday became a cultural touchstone and was widely considered one of the finest performances of his career. Providing a tragic Shakespearean gravity to the story of the gunfight at the OK Corral, highlighted by a memorable scene where his character recites Hamlet's soliloquy. Mature's Holliday embodied the chaotic middle ground between untamed lawlessness and the coming tide of American civilization, elevating the actor beyond his pure beefcake origins into true cinematic legend. Despite the character's brooding, deadly, and fearless demeanor, Victor Mature was notoriously jovial, self-deprecating, and intensely unpretentious, serving as the polar opposite of the tormented Doc Holliday. He was known to have multiple phobias and famously infuriated director Cecil B. DeMille on a later set by hiding from a wind machine and refusing to wrestle a tame, toothless lion. Professionally, Mature fought an uphill battle for respect. Despite his undeniable box office draw, Hollywood's elite and the critical establishment often refused to take him seriously as a dramatic actor. He was frequently typecast as a shirtless, beautiful hunk of man in biblical epics and gladiator films like Samson and Delilah and The Robe. This persistent typecasting ultimately eroded his passion for the craft. Feeling marginalized as a genuine talent and admitting that acting wasn't fun anymore, he stepped away from Hollywood at the peak of his earning power, famously quipping after being rejected from a country club because of his profession, "I'm not an actor and I've got 64 films to prove it." Victor Mature largely spent the subsequent decades out of the spotlight, choosing to enjoy his wealth as a shrewd real estate investor and a self-described professional loafer who spent hours a day on the golf course. He made only rare, self-parodying returns to the screen in the 1960s and 70s, making his final appearance in a 1984 television remake of Samson and Delilah. His personal life was colorful. He was married 5 times, finally finding lasting happiness with his 5th wife, opera singer Loretta Sabina, whom he married in 1974, and with whom he welcomed his only child, Victoria, in his early 60s. Mature passed away at his home in Rancho Santa Fe, California, on August 4, 1999, at the age of 86, following a battle with leukemia. His death marked the quiet end of a Hollywood giant, and he was brought back to his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, where he was laid to rest in a family plot marked by a poignant replica of the Angel of Grief monument at St. Michael's Cemetery. Kathy Downs as Clementine Carter. Born on March 3, 1924 in Port Jefferson, New York, the former Vogue model first brought Clementine to life on the silver screen in John Ford's 1946 cinematic masterpiece, My Darling Clementine. At the age of 22, Downs' portrayal of the refined and gentle former sweetheart from Boston became a cultural and cinematic touchstone. Her character stood as a symbol of civilizing grace, morality, and pure love against the rugged, lawless backdrop of Tombstone, Arizona, cementing her place as an iconic figure in one of the most revered westerns in film history. Despite the character's steadfast resolve and her celebrated secure future in the cinematic West, Kathy Downs' personal journey and real life were marked by stark contrasts and professional struggles. Where Clementine was the picture of serene grace and secure stability, Downs in reality experienced a far more turbulent life and was an independent yet increasingly vulnerable woman navigating a notoriously cold and unforgiving industry. Her career was heavily affected by the struggle of being typecast, pushing her from prestige studio pictures into a long string of low-budget B-westerns and obscure science fiction movies of descending quality. This downward trajectory made it incredibly difficult for her to find substantial work, and after her final television appearance on Perry Mason in 1965, her acting opportunities completely vanished. Kathy Downs spent her later years largely forgotten by the industry that once celebrated her enduring 2 divorces and ultimately falling into severe financial destitution. She lived out her final decade out of the spotlight in Los Angeles, grappling with the stark reality of unemployment and poverty after her once promising career evaporated. Downs passed away in Los Angeles, California on December 8, 1976, at the age of 50 following a battle with cancer. Her early death was followed by a deeply tragic aftermath. Her first husband, actor Joe Kirkwood Jr., had only just discovered her dire living conditions after years of being out of touch, and he was actively drawing up a trust fund to rescue her from poverty when he received the heartbreaking news that he was too late. Tim Holt as Virgil Earp. Born on February 5, 1919 in Beverly Hills, California, the actor brought a stoic loyalty to the screen in John Ford's monumental 1946 Western My Darling Clementine. At the age of 27, Holt's portrayal of Virgil Earp, Wyatt Earp's steadfast and tragic brother, whose murder ignites the legendary shootout at the OK Corral, helped cement the film as a cultural touchstone. The movie elevated the Earps to mythical status, offering a poetic depiction of frontier justice and brotherhood that remains one of the greatest and most influential westerns in cinematic history. Despite playing hardened frontiersmen and gritty gun-slinging lawmen like Virgil, Tim Holt was described off-screen as having a boyish, charming, and gentle personality that stood in sharp contrast to the rugged environments of his films. While he proved he was a highly capable dramatic actor in masterpieces like The Treasure of the Sierra Madre and The Magnificent Ambersons, his career was defined by the relentless struggle of being heavily typecast by his studio RKO Pictures. He was continuously relegated to starring in dozens of repetitive low-budget B-westerns. When the popularity of these B-westerns steeply declined in the early 1950s, Holt found it increasingly difficult to secure varied or meaningful acting work, leading to a frustrating professional stagnation that ultimately pushed him to leave Hollywood altogether. In his later years, Holt largely abandoned the film industry to embrace a quieter personal life, moving to Oklahoma, where he worked in several entirely different professions, including as a rancher, a building contractor, and the manager of a local radio station. He was married 3 times and raised 4 children, preferring the tranquility of his new life over the fading momentum of his acting career. Holt passed away in Shawnee, Oklahoma on February 15, 1973, at the age of 54 from bone cancer. His enduring legacy in his adopted hometown of Hera, Oklahoma, was cemented in a touching aftermath. The town honored him by renaming the street where he and his wife had lived to Tim Holt Drive, ensuring his memory lived on long after he was laid to rest at Memory Lane Cemetery. Ward Bond as Morgan Earp. Born on April 9, 1903 in Benkelman, Nebraska, the hulking former college football player brought Morgan Earp to life in John Ford's 1946 classic, My Darling Clementine. At the age of 43, Bond's portrayal of Wyatt Earp's loyal and dependable younger brother became a key element of a film that is widely considered one of the greatest westerns ever made. His performance helped elevate the Earp family to mythical status and cemented the legend of the gunfight at the OK Corral in the American cultural consciousness, showcasing a steady heroism that anchored the movie's poetic depiction of the frontier. Despite often playing steady, warm-hearted, and quietly heroic figures on screen, Ward Bond's real-life personality was notably different. He was a boisterous, deeply conservative, and highly polarizing figure whose intense involvement in right-wing politics and enthusiasm for the Hollywood blacklist alienated many of his peers. Professionally, Bond struggled for decades with being heavily typecast. Despite appearing in over 200 films and starring in undisputed masterpieces like It's a Wonderful Life and The Searchers, he was perpetually relegated to supporting roles as cop's henchman or the tough best friend. It took him nearly 30 years in the industry to finally step out of the shadows of his close friends like John Wayne and John Ford and secure a leading television role of his own. That long-awaited leading success finally came in 1957 when Bond was cast as the rugged trailmaster Major Seth Adams on the hit television series Wagon Train. The show became immensely popular, but Bond's triumph was tragically cut short. Ward Bond passed away suddenly at a hotel in Dallas, Texas, on November 5, 1960, at the age of 57 from a massive heart attack. His unexpected death sent shockwaves through the television industry as Wagon Train was one of the most watched shows in the country at the time. His final episodes were broadcast posthumously, and his close friend John Wayne delivered the eulogy at his funeral, famously inheriting a shotgun in Bond's will that Wayne had once accidentally shot him with during a hunting trip. Walter Brennan as Old Man Clanton. Born on July 25, 1894, in Lynn, Massachusetts, the prolific actor first brought the villainous patriarch to life on the big screen in the 1946 classic My Darling Clementine. At the age of 52, Brennan's portrayal of the sinister, whip-wielding leader of the Clanton gang became a cinematic touchstone, offering a chilling depiction of frontier lawlessness that was both terrifying and significant. For generations of filmgoers, his menacing performance opposite Henry Fonda defined a character that remains one of the Western genre's most iconic and culturally impactful antagonists. Despite the character's brutal and malevolent nature, Walter Brennan was a deeply conservative, family-oriented, and affable man, described by those who knew him as the polar opposite of the ruthless Old Man Clanton. This contrast was a significant part of his personal journey. He was naturally inclined toward warm, comedic roles, and found playing the cold-blooded murderer to be a stark departure. His career was also marked by the struggle of being heavily typecast as a 1932 accident that knocked out his front teeth forced him into a lifelong mold of playing old codger sidekicks, much older than his actual age. Brennan's path to stardom was preceded by intense professional hardship. He lost his entire fortune in a 1925 real estate crash, which made it incredibly difficult for him to find steady work and forced him to scrape by on grueling $7.50 a day bit parts as an extra. The filming of My Darling Clementine itself brought a professional sting. Brennan and the notoriously prickly director John Ford clashed terribly on set, resulting in a fractured relationship where the two men avoided working together ever again. Walter Brennan continued to work in television and film for decades, cementing his legacy as the only actor to ever win 3 Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor. He maintained a quiet, private life off-screen, enjoying a marriage to his wife Ruth that lasted for over 50 years. He took on the massively popular starring role of Grandpa Amos McCoy in the hit sitcom The Real McCoys, which ran from 1957 to 1963 and led The Guns of Will Sonnet in the late 60s. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, he delivered memorable performances in classics like Rio Bravo, before eventually retiring to his sprawling ranch in Ventura County, California. Brennan passed away at a hospital in Oxnard, California on September 21st, 1974, at the age of 80 from complications related to emphysema. His death was mourned across the entertainment industry as the loss of a cinematic pioneer, and he was respectfully laid to rest at the San Fernando Mission Cemetery in Los Angeles. Alan Mowbray as Granville Thorndyke. Born on August 18, 1896 in London, England, The distinguished British actor brought the wandering Shakespearean thespian to life in the 1946 John Ford classic, My Darling Clementine. At the age of 50, Mowbray's portrayal of the erudite but frightened vagabond actor became a memorable part of cinematic history. His character's dramatic recitation of Hamlet's to be or not to be soliloquy, while being forced to perform at gunpoint in a rowdy Tombstone cantina, provided a striking moment of high culture amidst the lawlessness of the Old West. Though a supporting role, Granville Thorndike left an indelible mark on the Western genre, standing out as one of the film's most critically acclaimed and culturally resonant character performances. Despite portraying a cowardly, heavy-drinking, and eccentric stage actor on screen, Alan Mowbray was a man of profound courage and discipline in real life. A highly decorated World War I combat veteran who served in the British Army, he earned the Military Medal and the French Croix de Guerre for bravery in action, a background that starkly contrasted with Thorndike's timid disposition. Professionally, Mowbray faced the relentless hurdle of being typecast in Hollywood. His rigid posture and clipped British accent relegated him to playing a seemingly endless parade of snooty butlers, pompous nobles, and comedic sidekicks. This narrow typecasting overshadowed his earlier ambitions as a playwright and stage director, and his on-screen caricature became so synonymous with the stiff upper lip stereotype that writer Raymond Chandler famously lampooned his butler persona in Pulp Fiction. While he worked consistently, the confinement to these supporting roles meant he struggled to find serious dramatic work outside of this comedic niche, a frustrating reality for a classically trained theatrical actor. Alan Mowbray continued to work in television and film for decades, appearing in major features like The King and I and Alfred Hitchcock's The Man Who Knew Too Much, while quietly cementing his legacy behind the scenes. Unusually for a Hollywood star, he preferred the business and organizing side of the industry, famously helping to establish the Screen Actors Guild as a founding member. He enjoyed a long marriage to Lorraine Carpenter from 1927 until his death. Though his family life drew significant media attention in 1960 when his 28-year-old daughter Patricia married his close friend and fellow character actor Douglas Dumbrille, who was 70 at the time. Mowbray passed away in Hollywood, California on March 25, 1969, at the age of 72 after suffering a fatal heart attack. He was interred at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, leaving behind a legacy as a trailblazing Union pioneer and one of the studio era's most recognizable character actors. John Ireland as Billy Clanton. Born on January 30th, 1914 in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, the classically trained actor first brought Billy to life in John Ford's 1946 Western masterpiece, My Darling Clementine. At the age of 32, Ireland's portrayal of the hot-headed and menacing youngest member of the notorious Clanton gang became a significant touchstone in classic Western cinema, offering a grounded and gritty depiction of frontier lawlessness that was both intimidating and authentic. For generations of audiences, his imposing performance and intense screen presence helped define a character that remains a pivotal part of the legendary cinematic narrative surrounding the gunfight at the OK Corral. Despite the character's uncultured and ruthless frontier nature, John Ireland was a former professional swimmer who had actually begun his acting career performing in Shakespearean theater. This contrast was a notable part of his personal journey. He was known off-screen as a cultured, charming Lothario, a polar opposite to the dusty, brutal outlaws he frequently portrayed. His career was also marked by the struggle of being typecast, which for a long period made it difficult for him to secure leading man roles rather than supporting villains and heavies. The middle stages of his career brought professional stings of their own. After clashing with studio executives battling contract disputes and facing industry rumors in the 1950s, he found Hollywood work so scarce by the 1960s that he was forced to relocate to Italy to sustain his career in low-budget European films and spaghetti westerns. John Ireland continued to work in television and film for decades, eventually earning an Academy Award nomination for his role in 1949's All the King's Men, and appearing in monumental epics like Spartacus. Off-screen, he had a colorful personal life, marrying 3 times, including a turbulent marriage to his frequent co-star Joanne Drew, before eventually settling into a quieter lifestyle. In his later years, he found a second career as the proprietor of an upscale restaurant aptly named Ireland's in Santa Barbara, California. Ireland passed away at a hospital in Santa Barbara on March 21, 1992, at the age of 78 from complications related to leukemia. He was survived by his third wife of 30 years, Daphne Cameron, and his children, and was peacefully laid to rest at the Santa Barbara Cemetery, leaving behind a cinematic legacy that spanned nearly 5 decades. Roy Roberts as mayor. Born on March 19, 1906 in Tampa, Florida. The prolific stage and screen actor first brought his commanding presence to the cinematic frontier in John Ford's 1946 classic, My Darling Clementine. At the age of 40, Roberts's portrayal of Tombstone's pragmatic and authoritative mayor added a vital layer of civic weight to the legendary retelling of the gunfight at the OK Corral. The film itself became a monumental cultural touchstone, widely celebrated as one of the greatest westerns ever made, and his performance perfectly grounded the story's tension between civilized law and untamed frontier justice. Despite frequently playing gruff, apoplectic politicians, stern businessmen, and uncompromising military officers on screen, Roy Roberts was known off-camera as an amiable, hard-working, and humble professional, whose true personality was the polar opposite of the hot-headed blowhards he so famously portrayed. This striking contrast was a testament to his versatility, but it also became the source of a persistent professional struggle. Roberts was heavily typecast as a blustery authority figure, a creative hardship that confined him to variations of the exact same foil character across decades of television and film. While he amassed an astounding number of credits, the rigid typecasting limited his opportunities for deeper dramatic roles, and the unpredictable cancellations of his numerous television projects forced him to constantly hustle for the next guest spot just to maintain his footing in a rapidly changing industry. Roy Roberts continued to work in television and film for decades, balancing his personal life with his wife Lillian and securing recurring roles on hit shows like The Gale Storm Show, McHale's Navy, and The Beverly Hillbillies. He still landed memorable film roles late in his career, including a part in the acclaimed 1974 neo-noir Chinatown, and made his final television appearance on a 1974 episode of Here's Lucy. Roberts passed away at St. Vincent's Hospital in Los Angeles, California, on May 28, 1975, at the age of 69, from a fatal heart attack. His death marked the end of an era for one of mid-century Hollywood's most recognizable character actors, and his passing was followed by his quiet interment at Greenwood Memorial Park in Fort Worth, Texas, where he was eventually joined by his devoted wife decades later. Jane Darwell as Kate Nelson. Born Patty Mary Woodward on October 15, 1879 in Palmyra, Missouri, the actress took on the role of dance hall owner Kate Nelson in John Ford's 1946 Western classic, My Darling Clementine. At the age of 67, Darwell's portrayal of the frontier matron added essential warmth and grit to a film widely celebrated as one of the greatest westerns of all time. Her appearance as Nelson reinforced her enduring cultural impact as a foundational character actor of Hollywood's golden age, grounding the mythic retelling of the Wyatt Earp legend with her signature salt-of-the-earth screen presence. Despite her cinematic reputation for playing impoverished, robust, and no-nonsense working-class matriarchs, Jane Darwell's real life was a stark contrast to her characters. Born into a wealthy and prominent family as the daughter of a railroad president, she grew up with aristocratic privileges and originally harbored ambitions of becoming an opera singer. Professionally, this stark divergence became a source of immense frustration as she struggled relentlessly with typecasting. Hollywood's rigid system capitalized on her age and stout figure, continuously relegating her to playing what she resentfully described as mealy-mouthed and genial small-town wives, a creative constraint that afforded her steady economic stability but stifled her broader theatrical ambitions. Darnell nonetheless maintained a prolific career in her later years, transitioning into television during the 1950s and making her final unforgettable film appearance as the Bird Woman in Disney's Mary Poppins 1964, a role she accepted only after Walt Disney personally visited the motion picture country home to coax her out of retirement. As of 2026, her legendary status in cinema remains intact, though she would be 146 years old today. Darnell passed away from a heart attack at the Motion Picture Country Hospital in Woodland Hills, California, on August 13, 1967, at the age of 87. Following her death, she was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, leaving behind an immortalized legacy as one of cinema's most recognizable maternal figures. Grant Withers as Ike Clanton. Born on January 17, 1905 in Pueblo, Colorado, the former newspaper reporter took on the role of the notorious Ike Clanton in John Ford's 1946 Western masterpiece, My Darling Clementine. At the age of 41, Withers's portrayal of the rugged, ruthless outlaw opposite Henry Fonda's Wyatt Earp helped define the cinematic legend of the gunfight at the OK Corral. The film itself became a monumental cultural touchstone recognized as one of the greatest westerns ever made, with Withers' menacing presence as part of the murderous Clanton clan perfectly grounding the dark, brooding atmosphere of the movie's post-war frontier setting. Despite his screen persona as a vicious and unrepentant thug, Grant Withers was a sensitive individual capable of a wry, laconic humor that was a stark contrast to the nasty heavies he was often hired to play. His professional journey was a difficult one. Originally a handsome, highly popular leading man who once shared top billing over rising talents like James Cagney, his career suffered a devastating blow following the scandalous publicity of his brief marriage and subsequent annulment to 17-year-old starlet Loretta Young in 1930. The fallout severely damaged his standing with major studios, leading to a frustrating period of being strictly typecast as the villain in B-movies, westerns, and serials. As his leading man status dwindled, he struggled to find varied work and was forced to navigate the remainder of his career battling noticeable weight gain, severe back problems, and profound personal distress. Grant Withers continued to find steady character work throughout the 1950s in film and early television landings, supporting roles on hit Western shows like Cheyenne and Wagon Train. But his personal demons ultimately overshadowed his professional life. Following a bitter separation and divorce from his fifth wife, actress Estelita Rodriguez, his physical and mental health rapidly deteriorated. Tragically, Withers passed away in his North Hollywood apartment on March 27, 1959, at the age of 54 from suicide by overdosing on barbiturates. His death was followed by the discovery of a heartbreaking suicide note that read, "Please forgive me, my family. I was so unhappy. It's better this way." And his passing was met with a distressingly brief 2-paragraph obituary in trade magazines, a quiet end for the former star, before he was finally laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. As we look back at the lives behind these iconic characters, we see more than just a change in appearance. We see the end of an era. The legends of My Darling Clementine carried the weight of history in their eyes, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire. If this trip down memory lane touched your heart, please give this video a like to help more fans rediscover these incredible actors.